Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome back. It's been a couple of weeks due to Shavuot, but we're glad to be back with Pirkei Avos, the Ethics of the Fathers, live from Israel with Rabbi Chaim Coffman. I missed last week, and no live broadcast for me at all last weekend, and so I'm glad to be back. And let's just jump right in and see how the rabbi's doing today. Shalom, Rabbi Kaufman. Always a joy to be with you. We missed you last weekend. How was Shavuos in Israel for you? And how you doing?
It's very good. Very good. It was it's busy. It's all about cheesecake, all about, staying up late at night and throwing off your whole body clock and all that. So it's all part of the fun of, reaccepting the Torah, renewing our commitments to Torah. So, thank God we don't normally have 2 days, of a holiday, but it coincided with Shabbos. So, a lot more to eat, a lot more to prepare. So, enjoyable all the way around.
Right on. Well, we're watching your Boston Celtics closely here in the West, and they're holding their mud. It's a 2-2 NBA Finals, and I just wanted to also let you know that
whatever happens if they win, I get a T-shirt. So if they lose, okay, I don't get a T-shirt.
Well, hey, also yesterday was a season opener for the CFL, and my team's playing there today. So,
oh, thank God! I'm glad I'm sitting down. CFL opened up. Let's open up the floodgates here. Anyway, we digress as usual. The Mishna says we're still in chapter 2, Mishna 11. This is going to be part 4, and most likely we'll have a part 5. And most likely probably part 6 also. We'll see where it all goes. But we're talking about the students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and the praise of each student, right? We saw by Rabbi Elizabeth Hirkin he's like a cemented cistern that loses not a drop, doesn't forget anything, right? We spoke about that. So we're still speaking about Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananiah. Right, and it's a little bit strange statement here. It says, praiseworthy is she who bore him. Right? Praiseworthy is the woman that gave birth to him. Now, we could say, well, she gave birth, and such a person, became so righteous, and all that. But if you look at it at face value, okay, she had a child. Child became righteous. So she's praiseworthy, right? The one explanation we saw is that he worked on his character traits tremendously, that his mother's praiseworthy because she gave birth to him. Right? In other words, we say that if a person does the right thing, they say, thank God he learned Torah. Right? Thank God his father taught him Torah. Thank God his Rebbe taught him Torah. If he does the wrong thing, God forbid, we get the opposite. Right? Totally the opposite. Where we'll say, it'll be a disgrace for this Jew. And we know throughout Jewish history that if a Jew does something wrong, all Jews get blamed. Whether the Jew is religious, he's not religious. Why do we all get blamed? Because we mentioned many times that Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh. All Jews are intertwined. We're all intertwined over here. So someone does something wrong, everybody gets blamed. Some 6'7" white guy does something wrong in the prairies. You think we're going to say, okay, all 6'7" white guys, we're going to kill them, or where they came from, or never, right? An Italian in Brooklyn does something wrong, saying we're going to burn down Italy. No more cannolis, never. By the Jewish people, totally different. If we do the right thing, right, then we should be praised, right? That's what we're supposed to do. And we spoke about that. We shouldn't think we're so great. That's what we're obligated to do. Right? But, we're all intertwined over here. 100% we're all intertwined. So we do the wrong thing, God forbid, we all get chastised. It doesn't matter who does it, doesn't matter why, doesn't matter anything. Point is, you do something wrong, a Jew does something wrong, we all get blamed. And that's why secular Jews during the Holocaust could not understand, at all why they were being taken out. Right? They say take all the other, religious Jews. We're like you. Married to women, go to universities, fought in your wars, and Hitler Yamach Shemoy B'Zichro, may his name be blotted out, may he rot. Wherever he is, he didn't care. He had Jewish blood. That was enough. So if we do the right thing, we can raise ourselves to the highest level. We do the wrong thing, we go straight to the ground. Right? There's nothing in between. Either we're going up, or we're going down. Right? You can't say, well, I'm neutral like Switzerland. Or, as I heard someone say, I'm good. I don't need to work on myself. I'm happy where I am. So being happy where you are, is akin to spiritual death. That's what it is. Because you're not doing anything. Imagine, going into a job interview. Yeah, I'm happy being mediocre. You have any good character traits? Not really. I'm just, run of the mill, average Joe Schmo. They're never gonna hire you, right? In general. So this is one thing. This is one thing that she's praiseworthy because look what he did. Now, if a child, we'll just throw this out there, if a child goes in the wrong path, who gets blamed? Parents. Parents get blamed. Now, you're going to say, but it's not necessarily the parents' fault. Maybe there are other things. There are other things going on where it's out of the parents' control, right? Because we got to be very careful, who our kids are friends with, who they hang out with. Someone once told me when your son goes off to yeshiva, you pray hard, he gets a good learning partner. Because if not, he can be taken down. There are bad influences out there. But you're going to say, there are certain things that are out of the control of a parent. But we're going to say that where does a child get most of their education from? You'll tell me they're in school all day, right? By yeshiva, they go till late at night, right? Depending on the age, right? They're in school all day. So you're going to say, well, the majority of education, who does it go through? School. Because they're there most of the day. Reality is not true. Even if that's true, that they're in school a majority of the time, the education, the real education, comes from home. Who are the people that the child should look up to, all things being equal? Parents. They're the role models, for better or for worse. The older child gets, the more parents get scrutinized. Things can totally get taken out of proportion, different things. Parents are human. Parents can make mistakes. They could, but they could, you don't want to make serious mistakes. We're not going to say they're going to cut you a short line over here, but it depends. It depends what's going on. And a child, and this is very hard for a parent to hear, but if a child feels there are things wrong, let's say in that relationship, and the parent thinks otherwise, and the parent thinks, listen, I've done this, I've done that, I've done the other thing, but the child doesn't feel it. So it's up to the parents to be the bigger person and have to change. In other words, I'm not saying the child's a hypochondriac over here. The child feels they're lacking in X, Y, or Z. That's what the child feels. Now, the parent can say, what are you talking about? I've done this, I've done that, I've done the other thing. What do you mean? I don't do this or I haven't done that. Now, you may not win that argument. But see, that's the perception of the child. If that's the perception of the child, the parents, all things being equal, have to take the higher ground. And if that's what the child feels, then the parent has to change something about that relationship. They have to change something in and of themselves. Right? What's the reason? What's the reason over here? Very simple. Because that's what the child feels. And if the child feels unloved, let's say, but the parent says, what are you talking about? I took you to ball games. I took you on vacation. Didn't we always go out for ice cream? Didn't we always do these things? And the child says, but that's not real. Okay, you did. I'm not going to say not. We're not going to deny. We're not going to deny over here. But that's not what makes the relationship, right? The relationship, that child has to feel that in the parent's eyes, there's nothing more important than that child. I'm not saying you play one child off the other. Each child should feel like that. And they should feel that they have that unconditional love. Now, there might be times parent might have to give over, quote unquote, tough love, right? Might have to punish, right? We don't want to have to punish, but if we do, the punishment always has to fit the crime. Because if the punishment doesn't fit the crime, a parent should never, ever punish in anger. Because if you punish in anger, you're not thinking, you throw out a punishment that does not fit the crime. Now, the child has to understand also, you don't want to have to punish, but they have to understand the repercussions for their actions. Children have to see that they don't have free reign over here, that there are boundaries. 100% there are boundaries. Parent has to be careful. And the reason the parent has to be careful is today, even in the religious world, what are parents afraid of doing? Parents are afraid of coming down too hard. Why? Because then, if the kid feels too much pressure or whatever, kid's going to say, come on, what do I need this for? What do I need religion for? What do I need to keep Torah mitzvahs for? It's an excuse. It's an excuse. And, a friend of mine once told me a teenager, a teenager is like their own creation. You got to be like the Rock at Gibraltar, like whatever they say. So a teenager could come and say, you don't let me do this, I'm going to go off. I'm going to go become secular. Now, obviously,
hold the parent
they're saying it
ransom.
out of anger. Yeah, they're holding you ransom, so to speak. Now, the parent has to say, okay, that's your choice. Everyone makes a choice, and you pay for that choice. But we're not backing down. We're not backing down over here. Right? So, on the one hand, parents don't want to come down too hard. Why? Because, there could be those repercussions. But at the same time, parent has to discipline. A kid does not want free reign. They may think they do when they're younger, but they absolutely do not want free reign. They want boundaries. 100% they want boundaries. Because if they have free reign, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle certain things. I just read an article earlier, different questions to two great rabbis in Jewish education. And the questions all had to do with social media, right? And how to deal with kids and boundaries and, and this and that. And one of the things, that came out, which they definitely both agreed, is a teenager should never have a smartphone. A teenager. Now, why not? Forget about going into everything about social media, and smartphones. We could be here till tomorrow, speaking about that. But without all that, what's the issue? So they both agreed that at that age, child's not mature enough. Child's certainly not mature enough. 14, 15, 16. They may think they are.
Rabbi, how would you relate it to driving a car?
No, driving a car is something else. Driving a car, okay. Here in Israel, it's a whole racket. It's a mafia. Why do I say it's a mafia? First of all, when in order to take driving lessons, you have to pass the theory test. Right? When I was growing up, theory test, you had to get 7 out of 10. And 7 out of 10, if you didn't get 9 out of 10, then you were mentally challenged. Like, because the questions were so easy. Here, the questions, you have to get 26 out of 30. But they come from a range of like 3,000 different types of questions. And obviously what are the harder questions? You're driving down the street, there's a car coming this way, car coming that way, who's got the right of way, right? All the, so those, like, when I had to retake it, I had to memorize these things. Because it wasn't 100% so clear, it wasn't 100% so clear cut, right? But regardless of that, you have to take 26 lessons. You have to take 26 out of 30, right? To start taking lessons. Then you have to take, if first time driver, you have to take 28 lessons. Now I remember I had to take 6 hours of driving, 6 hours of watching, right? They take 28 hours. Now each lesson each lesson can be anywhere between 150 to 200 shekels, which is like $70, $80 a lesson, right? $60, $70 a lesson. Multiply that by 28. And then you have to take the test. And the test itself is like $120, right? Something like that. And they always fail you, at least the first time. If not twice, 3 times. Because they can fail you for any little thing, right? And they'll tell you, listen, even if you know how to drive. And that's what they told me. Listen, you know how to drive. If you don't drive like the book, you won't pass. So I laughed. I said, nobody drives by the book. I said, it doesn't matter. You don't drive the book, you won't pass. You won't pass. Right? So the whole racket. So you're right. Right? To get a license, could be maybe, 16 and a half is a little bit young. Because, most people within the first 2-3 years of driving, they've been in one accident, at least. Right? Usually. I don't know exactly what the statistics are, but, younger drivers, less cautious than people who've been driving for a long time. Right? But regardless, driving, right, you have to have knowledge. Right? You have to have knowledge, you have to know what you're doing over here. But you don't have to have a 120 IQ. Anybody, sit behind the wheel as long as you know how to drive, you know the rules, you know the laws of the,
safety,
the road.
Yeah.
You know safety, whether you practice it or not, whatever. You know the laws of safety. Good. You give somebody, we're talking the religious one. Because, we want to be more insular. We don't want these outside influences. I've spoken about it a lot. Outside influences are dangerous. Absolutely dangerous. Right? Going to university. You gotta say, come on, everyone goes to university. So now they have all these online programs and different things. But why? So I'll tell the following story. The story I mentioned before. And that is the famous story of the Baal HaTanya. Baal HaTanya had a student. Right? He was the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, had a student, wanted to go to university. So the Baal HaTanya warned him. He said, there's a lot of heresy there, a lot of terrible things there. So the student said, come on, I've been by you and learned by you for many years. I didn't become so righteous. So if I go to university, I'm not going to be so bad. So the Baal HaTanya said, you're making a big mistake. You're making a big mistake. He said, because in order to become impure, all you have to do is touch something. You touch a dead animal, you become impure. You want purity, you got to absorb it. Purity does not come by osmosis. Purity is something you got to work on. Now, forget about, we're not living in Victorian England. We know exactly what goes on universities, especially in a co-ed dorm. Right, Rabbi Victor Miller, blessed memory, said, what a co-ed dorm is? I think I mentioned this on Tanakh Talk also. What's a co-ed dorm? What's it compared to? A brothel. You got to say, come on. What are you, square? What do you think? That's all that's going on there? No, that's not the only thing that's going on there. But what do you think is going on? Some more, some less. Right? That's what's going on. Right? So that's a whole other issue. Right? But now you open up a world that a person's not ready for. So scenes and images that they see are there. They're there for life. Person is now scarred for life from what they've seen. Again, person can watch a movie. We all know movies are fake. Right? The guy that just got killed, however he got killed, is probably, having, having a pina colada in a bar right now, having a good time. Right? He didn't die. And people get caught up. I can't believe they killed him. They didn't. He's not dead. But we all get caught up in the, you get caught up in the moment. Yeah, you get caught up in it. I'm not going to say it's not enjoyable, whatever, but certain things that a person sees, or everything, like you're recording now. Roku Network, right? You're recording now. Everything's recorded. Our soul records it. So now a person might have seen something 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever. It's in the deep recesses of their soul and comes out whenever it comes out. It may be dormant for so long. Right? We mentioned before, remember this whole thing with this basketball player and Julian Edelman, right? This guy made an anti-Semitic statement, while I was playing a live video game, live streaming, whatever. And we said that when a person makes a statement, whatever that statement is, right? Torah says you're not saying something you didn't already think of. In other words, a person can say, oh, I shouldn't have said that. But why did you say it? You got angry. You weren't thinking, whatever the case is.
Verbal diarrhea.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So a person makes a statement. This guy made a statement, right? It was an anti-Semitic statement. Now, he made an anti-Semitic statement. What's the obvious thing someone's going to say? You're an anti-Semite. He didn't get paid for the rest of the year. Okay, he was on injured reserve, whatever. Maybe he's going to take some other courses, make his mind more open. Julian Edelman calls him out. He's not even Jewish because his father's Jewish. But okay, Julian Edelman calls him out and says, come on, I go to Miami every so often. Come to me for Shabbat dinner. Jules, what are you going to show him? You're going to say, wow, Shabbat dinner. Is the food kosher? Probably not. Let's say, and even if it is, what are you going to say? You're going to sing Shabbos songs with him? You're going to tell him how great it is to be a Jew? You're going to convince him? Come on, you don't know anything. You probably can't read Hebrew. Right? I'm being generous here. Right? Not the world's greatest Torah scholar. Football, different issue. Torah scholar, not even close. So what are you going to show him? And then this basketball player is going to say, oh, Jules, thank you so much. Kosher food, knishes, all these great things. And guess what? Now I'm not anti-Semite. Now I love Jews. Well, that's not going to change. What's it going to change? Maybe it'll make them feel a little more comfortable, this and that. But when a person makes a statement, let's keep in mind, you make a statement. Why'd you say it? I wasn't thinking. I was tired. I was okay? We can make 150,000 different excuses. But I'm going to tell you I'm going to tell you why you said it. You know why you said it? Because you thought about it before. Because you actually believe it. And the fact that you believe it, even if it's in the deep recesses of your hearts, and maybe you joke and kid amongst your friends, who's not taping you, right? Whatever the case is. Maybe you make some comments here and there, but now you made the comment in front of the whole world, and everybody saw it. Oh, NBA comes down like no tomorrow. We can't have that. We can't be racist. Like the NFL, you can't have a football player sucker punch his girlfriend, drag her into an elevator. You can't have that, right? That was it. Never played another game. Finished. So a person says something, right? We'll get back to Torah here. Person says something that's part of your psyche. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to come out every second of every day. Certainly not. And if a person's smart and he's got racist tendencies or whatever, you keep your big mouth shut. You never let it come out. You might think it. Maybe the friends of yours, you may joke about it here and there, right? But you never want to say it in public, right? So we have a statement. The statement is what goes around comes around. Rabbi Yonah, somewhere in Pirkei Avos, says that when a person thinks and you want to try and hide yourself, we'll probably get to when I'm 103, right? When a person wants to hide something, God's going to say, at some point, I'm going to bring it out. And I'm going to reveal it. Right? When a person does something, let's make it even more graphic. When a person does something, even in public, it doesn't mean they're guilty of X, Y, and Z. Doesn't necessarily mean that. Right? But I will say that it could send, bad vibes. Give an example. There was a conservative rabbi, conservative reconstruction, doesn't really matter. Really shouldn't even call him a rabbi, but, on Saturday or on a festival, when they took out the Torah, the Holy Torah, imagine. They're taking out a Torah scroll. Let's just say the Torah scroll was kosher, right? Well, we'll make it easy. He's taking this Holy Torah scroll. So whoever's carrying the Torah, he's right behind them. And he's walking behind them, and what's he doing? He's kissing all the women. He's kissing all the women. Hi, how are you? Kiss on the cheek, kiss on the cheek. The guy's older, much older. Don't know.
Richard Dawson, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Is he still alive? Maybe. I don't know. Is he still alive? I don't know. Survey says. Anyway, so it's funny. Just speaking about that, my youngest son is going to be 11 in a couple of weeks. So the Shabbos table, I brought up something whatever, something, whatever, his parsha sheet, whatever, in the Torah portion of the week, the Rebbe brought out, and I said, well, the Medrash says, and my son goes, eh. It's classic. So I guess, heard me say it a number of times. Survey said, okay, right? So somebody like that, standing behind the Sefer Torah, this perverted pig standing behind the Sefer Torah, kissing all the women as he walks by, right? Obviously a mixed congregation. Now, it eventually came out that, he overstepped his authority a number of times. It came out. In the end, okay, he retired, and they gave him all the pomp and circumstance of being retired, retiring or whatever, but it came out what happened. And it wasn't the first time. It wasn't the second time, right? So now, you're going to say, come on, if someone stands behind the Sefer Torah and kisses all the women, you think other things are going on? I'm not going to say I approve anything's going on. I don't think it looks so good, right? But you want to show you're upstanding. You want to show, whatever, and you're so open-minded and all that, going to kiss all the women. God's going to say, I'm going to expose you. I'm going to totally expose you. Why? Because you're doing things behind closed doors or trying to do things behind closed doors. So says Rabbeinu Yonah, you try and do that, God's going to say no. God's going to expose you. At some point. When? Whenever God decides. But he's going to come and say, oh, you want to hide this? Not going to happen. Why? Because everything's in front of me, God says. I see everything. I know the thoughts of man. Right? That's what my Rebbe brought down. Just saw earlier. That it comes to Rosh Hashanah. In judgment. And judgment goes to the depth of the heart. It doesn't go just on what we did. Okay, so what we did, we can take a scorecard. Did this good? Did this bad? This, that, and the other thing. It's beyond that. It's about what we think. It's about motivation. It's about why we do things. Read another article. Why do people do things? Why do people, let's say, or countries, why do they go to war? Right? Because as brought down, Leid Malachim B'Yad Hashem. The hearts of the kings are in the hands of God. So God's orchestrating. Fine. But without that, we don't have to come on to that. Why do things happen when they do? Or sorry, let's say better. Why do they happen? Why they do? Why do they happen? So people say because people have altruistic motives. So I saw Rav Victor Miller brings this down. He says if you look at a lot of things that people did, it had nothing to do with altruistic motives. He said, I'll give you an example. Not going to be too popular to say, right? But we don't care about being politically correct. Let's look at the Civil War. You look at the Civil War. What, quote unquote, were they fighting about? Slavery. That's what they'll tell you, right? But if you dig a little bit deeper, it wasn't about slavery.
Yeah, I thought it had to do with cessation. They wanted to start their own country.
The battle cry, whatever. You think Abraham Lincoln really deep down wanted, cared about slaves? I don't think he cared about slaves, right? No, he didn't seem to care about slaves. It was a bigger thing. Anytime any nation's going to go to war, right, they might say we have altruistic motives. But the reality is there's something else going on. Or someone invents something or whatever. That's what he's talking about. Like even inventing something. Why does someone invent X, Y, or Z? Not because, it's going to help this, going to help that. There's something else behind it. There was something else behind the scenes. So we'll make a little bit of a jump. What's behind the scenes in all of us? Now, if most people knew the thoughts of of other people, they'd probably be horrified. Horrified. Now sometimes people give over bad body language. And so people, if they're able to read body language, if they can read body language, then okay. But if you don't read body language so well, or it's not as obvious, you have no idea what the other person thinks. Right? And certainly in the States, in the Western world, you walk into a store, hi, how are you? Can I help you? I'm like, what if I drop dead? You care? Or you just want to make a sale? Right? I remember once many years ago, my wife went into a store and, walk in the store and there are three people there ready to help you. Right? It's like, I'm Fred, I'm Bob, I'm Jim. What can we do for you? I'm like, Fred, Bob, Jim. Like, oh, we need batteries. Oh,
Yeah,
batteries.
they get mugged by the salesman. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like batteries over, this, aisle 3, this over there, like whatever. But one of the things I couldn't stand, growing up is this idea of people who are fake. Hi, how are you? Do you really care? Tell that to somebody when you're in the store. Hi, can I help you? Do you really want to help me? Don't you know the old jingle? I don't know if it's still have the same jingle. 2 all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, right? We want to do it your way? No. Why do you want to do it your way? So you can make money. So you'll make the burger the way I want, right? But there's an ulterior motive. Oh, can I help you? You don't care. You just want to make money, right? Okay, I digress here. What's the point? Because the point is, who are we? Are we what we do? Are we what we think? Or are we a combination? Right? In other words, we can do all the right things. We can do all the right things that God wants. We can pray 3 times a day. We can eat kosher. We can learn. We can do all that. But let's think. If a person prays 3 times a day, before you go to sleep and you take stock of what you did during the day, think, how did I make blessings? How did I interact with others? Think about prayer if you're a Jew and you pray 3 times a day. Did you give it your all? Where was your mind? We're going to be shocked. Shocked out of our good when God says, okay, let's play the video. Because the first thing when happens, a person dies, they see their life flash before their eyes. Says the Zohar. So you're going to see this video of everything you did. With all the thoughts, all the intentions, in like a nanosecond. You're going to see your whole life. And you can't deny what you did. I can't deny all the times I made fun of the CFL, recorded. Can't deny it. Can make fun of it, but I can't deny it. So a person can't deny what they said. But you know what? It goes deeper than that. Because part of the embarrassment is what I thought also. So when God goes into our kishkis, into our inside, and he digs around, and he says, let's see where your mind was. Oh, you pray 3 times a day, you get credit. This one you get a C minus, this one you get an F, and this one you get a B. Well, what's the discrepancy? Let's see where your mind was. Let's see where your mind was when you were learning. But I was learning. Yeah, did you get distracted? Did you talk about politics? Did you get involved in whatever? Your goal when you're learning, we're going to see this in Pirkei Avos one day, probably when I'm about 72, and that is that if you're learning and you say, wow, what a beautiful tree. What a beautiful tree. You see a picture of the Grand Canyon. I don't know. Someone shows you a picture of the Grand Canyon. Say, what a beautiful thing. What does the Mishna in Pirkei Avos say? What does it say in the ethics of our fathers? Liable for death penalty. What do you mean death penalty? I wasn't watching my Celtics. I wasn't doing that. Probably crying over that. Right? I wasn't doing that. I was admiring God's creation. I was saying what a beautiful thing it is. So why are you going to get zapped? Why is God going to zap you in such a case? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense logically. Because what are you going to argue? What's the defendant in you going to say? I was learning Torah. What are you talking about? I was learning Torah. I was praising your name because of your unbelievable creation. God's going to tap me on the shoulder, probably throw me around the universe, right? And say, that's beautiful. There's only one problem. I didn't want you praising me because of the Grand Canyon while you're in the middle of learning. When you're in the middle of learning, don't get distracted. Learn. You're going to say, but I'm praising God over here. So there are times to do that. There are times not to do that. You're learning my holy Torah and speaking about the Grand Canyon. You're in the middle of a Bayin Rava. And one ox scored the other and back and forth. What does that have to do with the Grand Canyon? What does that have to do with my creation? Doesn't have anything to do with anything. God says you're there to learn Torah. Good. Learn it. Don't get distracted by these other things. We'll speak about it when we get there. Right? So we have to understand we have to understand it's not just what a person does. A person can act, do all the mitzvahs and keep everything and have nothing to do with God ever, as we would say in Boston. Have nothing to do with God. Why? Why? Because they're giving him lip service. They're just going through the motions. They're doing things by rote, which we've spoken about, which is akin to spiritual death. So now someone's going to ask. Well, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. I'm toast over here in either case. Because if I'm not learning to my ability, to the best of my ability, then I'm also in trouble. Where do we learn this out from? Shavuos. What is Shavuos? What's the judgment on? Judgment on fruits, the Mishna says in Rosh Hashanah, the beginning, but it's also judgment on Torah. The judgment of Torah that a person learns. So what's the connection in Parshas B'chukosai that we read a few weeks back? In the curses right after. Because the Torah tells him, if I go in the right path, that's good. What's going in the right path mean? Rashi says, Amelus B'Torah. Means delving deeply into Torah. So Rabbi says, so what's the connection to the curses? I understand, right? The Ramchal says in Path of the Just. He says, what are we here in the world for? To toil, to struggle, to work hard, to learn as much Torah as we can. Okay? That's what I'm here for. Now, what if I'm a little bit lazy? Or what if I'm a lot lazy? What if I'm just going through the motions? So then my Rebbe says, all that depth in Torah that you could have learned and you didn't, you get all the curses. So what's the obvious question? The obvious question is, we're human. We might get distracted, right? Here and there. But at least I'm trying to do the right thing. So if we're trying to do the right thing, there's hope. But see, you have to remember, the closer we are, the more repercussions there are. The closer you are to the king, you can get burnt. As Corbin Aaron says at the beginning of chapter 16 in the book of Leviticus about death of Nadav and Avihu. The Rabbi Chaim HaKadosh, blessed memory, brings him down. He says, Corbin Aaron says, the closer you are to the king, you do something wrong, the punishment could be death. The punishment could be much more severe. Someone grew up as a potato farmer in the prairies. No offense, someone's a potato farmer grew up in the prairies. They don't know anything about anything. They go against the king. Are they going to get punished? Yeah. But they're not going to get punished so severely. It depends what it is. If they desecrate Shabbos, they'll get punished severely. Right? They act as a homosexual, they'll get punished severely. They intermarry, they'll get punished severely. Right? By other things, they'll be like they did it by accident. Okay. So imagine the water boy. The ball boy does something wrong over here. You think the king's going to care? Not going to care. If it affects the king directly, maybe. Right? But this person has no significance. If he's got no significance with the king, is the king even going to look at him, sniff at him? Nothing. But if you are very close to the king, let's say you're second in command, and you did something wrong, the king takes all his ire out on you. You're going to say, but come on, kingy, we're so close. Can't you overlook that? No, I can't. Let's take friendship. You have a best friend, a very close friend. And you're down and you're counting on them. And they don't come through. Now, it depends what it is, depends how severe it is. But if someone who's close to you lets you down, how does that situation get fixed? One of a number of ways. One way is you'll never rely on this person again because they let you down and you were in a bad spot. Or you chalk it up and say, well, I didn't really expect them to help me anyway. You can blow it off that way. But could be that friendship will never be the same. Why? Because you're very close. and when a person's very close to someone else and you get let down when you needed them, it's not a small letdown. Right? If it was someone you weren't really so close to, and they let you down, okay, you didn't really expect that much. Right? I've heard this statement a lot. I wouldn't say it's something like to take stock of, but people will say, expect nothing and whatever I get is a blessing. It's kind of a morbid way to look at things. In other words, I don't expect anything from anybody. But if I do get something and whatever, okay. So that's, I think it's a little bit of a morbid way to look at things. But the point is, it depends where a person's holding, in the bigger scheme of things. Because if the person's not so close, you don't expect anything. If they are close and you get let down. Now, this happens a lot, most likely, not just by friends, by family. Right? Family can let a person down. Families, we mentioned many times, can be 100% an albatross. What's the statement everybody says? Family's family. Blood is thicker than water. I don't even want to tell you how many times I've heard this. Nauseating. Blood is thicker than water. What does that mean? Well, we're family. Yeah. And nothing. You treat me like family? No. You have any, you have apathy? Yes. Whatever. Family can be an albatross. Not saying everybody, whatever. But if a person's down and there's no one around to help, and who's the least, that at least you should get help from when a person's down? Family. Why? Because of this statement, blood is thicker than water. Now, everything depends what the person did, fine. But usually the rally call will be family. And what happens when families, it's kind of like, when I was in University of New York, and I'm running for the train, and I stuck my token in, and the token got jammed. And I'm going 150,000 miles an hour, token got jammed, I went flying 30 feet. People walking by, someone looks down and says, wow, that looks like it must have hurt. Just kept walking. So a person's down, all right, we're not going to say it like that, but a person's down, and family's like, you're on your own. Good luck. Leaves a bad taste in your mouth. It means that they don't really care that much. Now, you would think if a person's down, they should be able to go to family. That's what you would think. Doesn't always work out that way. Family doesn't work out that way. But people say family's thicker than water. Blood is thicker than water. Anyway, I digress here. The point is the person has to remember. Who are we relying on the most? We learned from the Holocaust, you never, ever, ever rely on man. That's one of the messages. Can't rely on man. People ask the question, where was God during the Holocaust? God killed 6 million Jews. Well, it takes a lot of people to kill 6 million Jews. You have the Germans, you have the Latvians, you have the Ukrainians, you have the Russians, you have the Poles. No, that's not the question, where was God? The question is, where was man? Right? That's the question. Man's inhumanity to man. So you can say, okay, that being the case, when the chips are down, you do whatever you can to fix whatever the problem is. That's what you do. You got this bill to pay, something out, whatever, you got to deal with it. You got to figure out how you're going to fix it to the best of your ability. May not end up the way you want or so smooth, whatever, but you got to fix it. You got to live in this world. But we have to remember one thing. And this thing my Rebbe said many, many times, you got to say during, that we should say, we should have said during Corona. And that is, God, you're the one who runs the world. You're the one in charge. Now, when a person's in dire straits, whether it's health, making a living, other things, so what's the mantra a person should pray and say? I might have done this to myself. Maybe I didn't. Maybe you're trying to squeeze me. Maybe you're trying to get me to return. Whatever the case is, And in the end, you're the one who can make the difference. Now, I'm not just going to sit there and say, okay, I'm not going to do anything. Because the Avos says, and duties are hard, you got to put your best foot forward. So you got to put your best foot forward anyway. But what's the bottom line? Bottom line is God's the one in charge. And the fact that there are times we worry, and in the end, God takes care of it. It may not be pretty. But in the end, God says, so what are you worried about? You don't think I can change the world? You don't think I have the ability to change the world? I have the ability to change the world. I can change anything in 1 second. Question is, do we believe that? And anyone who's been on the need of being saved in different ways, right? I'm talking, well, it could be spiritual salvation also. Right? I'm talking about physical salvation different ways. And you had no idea. You had no idea where it was going to come from. Can I rely on man? Not going to rely on man. Man's going to let us down. I have to put my best foot forward. But I can tell you, personal experience, things have, different things have happened out of nowhere, from where it was least expected. Least expected. Some I had an idea, this, that, but, when you least expected, where it's going to come from. A person can say, well, I did it myself, I did this, I did that. No. You're taking out this X factor. God's the X factor. Because, person having difficulty, let's say, in business. They say, okay, I'm going to take on more advertising. I'm going to do this. I'm going to lower my prices. I'm going to, whatever the case is. They come up with all these great ideas. Now, are they going to be successful? You talk to marketing strategists. You talk to other people. They'll say, yeah, if you do this, this, and this, you cut these costs, those costs, this, that. This should happen. This should happen. Now, it may happen.
No guarantees, though, right?
No guarantees, right? I'll tell you what happened to me. Tell you another personal tale. So I took a real estate course a number of years ago from a certain real estate guru, and it was a 6-month course, and basically said, okay, you do this step by step. Any market, you find undervalued properties, you'll be able to give them off to other people, to other investors, not using your own money, different things, whatever. Proven. I invested a lot of money in this. And I did step by step. Now, every week there was a for 6 months, there was a call, right? That would answer people's questions, different things. And people starting out, now, again, I'm not putting myself on a pedestal here. These were not road scholars that were on these calls. Some of them went to college, some not, whatever. They weren't the brightest people I've ever heard in my life. Okay, and they're all making money. Some more, some less, but it's proven. He did this, he did that, and it worked. Now, this person claims it works in every market, right? So I was living in Lakewood, New Jersey. Prices were high. You can't do it, it's okay. You got to find, other markets, whatever. But I put up signs, did this, did that. It's not going. Now, if other people are making money, they're doing the exact same thing. Doesn't matter where. Because it works anyway. There are people all over the country. Different places, all over the country. So it works everywhere. So all these people telling their stories. And then asking different questions, what to do about this, do about that. They're all making money. Some was quicker, some took longer, whatever. So what happened? To me, it didn't make any sense. I'm doing exactly what everyone else is doing. Now, if you're doing exactly what everyone else is doing, even if you're not in your own market, fine, you should get the same result. If 10 people are doing the same thing and they're getting that result, why aren't you getting that result? So you say, your signs aren't big enough. You're not saying the right thing. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. So I called up my rabbi and I asked him. I said, this doesn't make any sense. I'm doing what everyone else is doing. He says, if you're putting your best effort in, it's not going, then obviously either God doesn't want it or there's a block. There's some sort of block, and they haven't told me what to do. And they told me, call me afterwards, tell me what happened. Told me a certain thing to do, and I didn't tell the people why I was doing it, whatever. I'll tell you in a couple of weeks. And shortly thereafter, things started to open up. Like one thing after another. Didn't mean I closed something straight away, but it took a while. So I called him up. I said, how did you know? So he said, if you're putting your best foot forward and nothing's going, and everyone else is doing the same, and they're making money, then there's something else going on in spiritual terms. Because it doesn't make sense. Now, if I'm a secular person, Jew or non-Jew, they'll say, your signs aren't good. Your message isn't good. You don't know how to talk to buyers and sellers. I don't know. I'm following the scripts. All the scripts, everything's laid out. I'm not doing anything no one else is doing. I'm not even yelling and screaming. Everything's laid out. So what's the answer? The answer is that God doesn't want you to do this. Meaning, you're doing everything you can like everybody else. And in the end result, God says, survey says, I'm going to squeeze you. And then eventually the door started to open. And then everything crashed in 2008. I came back to Israel. Okay. But you look at something like that, people will come up with 1,000 excuses. Oh, it doesn't work in that area. Oh, you didn't do this. Oh, you got to do, okay. So you tweak it this way, you tweak it that way. Whatever. You're doing the same and it doesn't work. So it's something that God's going to say, okay, you're going to struggle here. Why are you going to struggle? For whatever reason. But the person's mantra has to be, okay, I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. You want me to get out of this? Get me out of it. You're the one in charge. It's not about me. And people make the mistake, another good example in the Jewish marketplace here in Jerusalem. Most people getting the fruits and vegetables from the same vendor. So this guy's screaming, my tomatoes number one, my cucumbers number one. And you're going to say, well, it's all about three things. Location, location, location. Right? So why is this person making more money than the person right next to him? You're going to say it's advertising. You're going to say this. You're going to say that. You know what the answer is? Because God didn't want to be successful. That's the only reason that makes any sense. Because if they're doing the exact same thing, it's the same produce. Right? So you can tell me, it has to do with service. Come on, you're in the car industry. You understood this. It's all about how you serve someone else. Right? It's all about the give and take. Do they feel comfortable with you? They think you're just trying to sell them a lemon. It's all about that. It's all about relationships. True. So if you have the relationships and you're doing this and you're doing that and it doesn't work, you have to put your best foot forward. Hope the bubble stay clear. You got to put your best foot forward. So you tweak it this way, tweak it that way. But bottom line, is that going to make you successful? No. Not going to make you successful. Why not? Because there's an X factor. There's an X factor, big X factor. And the big X factor is God himself. Now, you're going to tell me someone could invent, famous pet rock. We would have invented it, made no money. God wants this person to have billions. Why? I don't know. You don't have to walk it. You don't have to feed it. Don't have to drink anything. Perfect. Made a mint. Or someone who put in these little umbrella, these wooden umbrella things in cocktail drinks. I also made a mint. Why? Don't know. It went. God wanted it to go. And for someone else, it probably wouldn't have gone. For whatever reason. So we think we're in charge. We think it's all about what we do. Now, we have an obligation to put our best foot forward. That for sure. That for sure. But see, there's another factor. And the other factor is there's Mr. S. There's the evil inclination, the angel of death. Now, he could say, God, come on. Why are you doing this to him over here? Why are you helping him over here? right? Famous story with Job. That God says, hey, what do you think of my servant Job over here? So he says, come on, let me at him, and I'll get him to curse you. Oh, you'll never get him to curse me. He says, okay, let me try. So he says, fine, but you can't kill him. Right? That's what God says to Job. God says to Mr. S. You can't kill him. Takes away his family, takes away his money, gives him all kinds of suffering. All kinds of suffering. Now he had everything. Person goes from everything to nothing, kind of hard. Right? It's very, very hard over here. That's when a person's faith has to be the strongest. But if you realize that God's the one calling the shots, and imagine if God would say, you know what? You really deserve the death penalty for this and that, but I'm going to have mercy. Right? Because in the future, you're going to do this, that, and the other thing. So I'm going to have mercy now. I'm not going to kill you. You deserve to die. But guess what? Instead, I'll take away your money. Now, if God would tell us then, and say you're going to be on this odyssey for 20 years or whatever, and you're going to suffer like this and like that, but in the end, you're going to have this, that, and the other thing and whatever, okay? Now, you wouldn't necessarily sign up for that. It's not something we want, but if you had a promise from God himself, you had that promise. And now you know that information. In 20 years, with all the suffering and moving around and this and that, God's going to show you other things of, where it's going to be worth it in different ways. That's a different story. What's the problem? We're not given that information. We're not given that information. So you can be more qualified to do other things, build other things, all kinds of things based on that life experience. But you don't want it. You don't want to go down that path. But if you were given that promise, it's another thing. That's the famous question by Abraham. God says in the book of Genesis, Lech lecha me'aretzecha. He says, take leave, go from everything you know, from the land, your father's house, all that. Go to a nation. I'm not going to go to a land. I'm not going to tell you, but go to a land. I'm going to make you rich, famous. You're going to have kids. All these things. Everyone will say, okay, I'll sign up. Not a problem. Right? What's that? This is one of the tests Abraham goes through. One of the 10 tests. So you're going to say, what kind of test is that? God promises you fame, money, kids. But what's he doing? He's bringing all these people closer to God. All these idolaters, him and his wives. He could end up in Pago. He could end up in Yukon territory. I don't know. Anybody live in Yukon territory these days? Freezing. He could end up in a wild tundra. No one speaks his language. Not going to be successful. He doesn't know where he's going. But God gives him a promise. God says, just go, I'll take care of you. But he's leaving everything he knows. That's the test. That's the test. Every step he takes, he's believing in God. God knows what he's doing. Now, we're not giving this information. We take things on our own. We do things on our own, or we think it's in our best interest. Might be, it might not be. Whatever the case is. But we have to realize it's not about what I do over here. I have to put my best foot forward. We've said this many times. I have to put my best foot forward. But in the end, it either gets blessed or it doesn't get blessed. Blessed based on whether God wants it to or not. So, we don't always understand. And if a person has talent and they're not able to use that talent, can be kind of frustrating, right? I'm sure Dan has no idea what I'm talking about, right? You can have all this talent, not be able to use it, right? So you could ask the $1.5 million question, so why did God give it to me? And what was the answer I was given a number of times? Maybe it's not your time to use it. Oh, that was like taking a dagger. Why? Because if you didn't have the talents, right? I know a friend of mine wanted to do Jewish outreach. He didn't have the talent.
Talents develop.
Talents can develop, but for some people, when it comes to certain things, it's either you have it or you don't. It can be developed, right? But, a person can learn.
Starving artist syndrome versus
a person can learn, let's say, like how to speak in public. A person can learn what people want to hear, what they need to hear, different things. putting the package together and showing others and giving that over, that is a whole different thing. That is a whole different thing, right? So the idea, I'll tell you my own life experience. Use myself again as an example. When I started teaching many years ago. People asked me, I was doing some informal things. So people said, where'd you learn how to teach? I said, I don't have any experience. You guys are my guinea pigs. Right? This is, whatever, many years ago. So, yeah, things need to be perfected and tweaked a little bit, this, that. But where does that all come from? All this useless knowledge I have and some good knowledge also. Where did it come from? It's because God wanted me to give it out. In different ways. You're going to say, come on, but did you really think you were talented to do it? I have no training. Probably could use some training, certain things, right? But it's all what God has given me. I could be on 2 hours of sleep, 4 hours of sleep, more, less, and the energy is still going to be there. How? I can't tell you. It's not normal. Definitely not normal in many ways. But, if someone, everybody has talent. It depends on what. But, if someone doesn't see success in something, doesn't mean you're not necessarily going to be successful. A person can learn certain things, that's true, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be successful over here. So, what was the hardest thing for me? So, one of the hardest things for me was, if you have the talent, now that's taken away. And now you can't use it. So, the question is, okay, you have certain talent, and whatever it is, you want to try and maximize it to the best of your ability, and you're getting blocked. This way, that way, the other way. So now, bills start to pile up. You say, okay, I have this talent, but it's not making money, so I got to do other things. You can do that on the side. Okay? Right? It's also worth something. But what was the frustration? Frustration was the other people doing it, and they're getting help. Why can't I get help? If a person doesn't have the talent, it's one thing. If you've never tasted success, it's one thing. But a person had it and got ripped apart. It's hard to take. Right? So people will say, well, you got to do other things. It's not going to involve the real estate, whatever. But, you got to do other things because maybe God's saying, no, this is not your time. Now, it could be. But the hard pill to swallow. Very hard pill to swallow. So, you don't give up on your dreams. I'm not going to say, a person should give up on their dreams. At the same time, not everything we're good at makes money. It just doesn't. Right? You take someone who's a teacher. They don't make money. Certainly not in the Jewish world. Right? They're trying to fix that. But it's whatever. It's a major catch-22. And there are great people that should be out there, educating people, but they can't make ends meet. That's a tragedy. And then they have to retrain and do other things. Even though that's where their passion is. So a person has to have a passion. You have to be passionate about something. But at the same time, we have to realize that passion doesn't necessarily make money. But, we have to focus at what we're good at. Because if you do something you don't like and you don't particularly like, but okay, it's going to help you in other ways, sometimes you just might have to do it anyway. But the Avos says you stick to what you're good at. So, so the idea over here is, back to the, part of the original point. Back to this other point, and that is what I think over here. God's not just going to judge about what we did. That's part of the judgment. Where I was holding, God's never going to judge a person where he wasn't holding. He's not going to say, hey, in 20 years you should be doing this and doing that. You're not close to that right now. So I'm going to judge you much harder for what the future. No. We learned it out from Ishmael. Because the Torah says that he was going to die. And the angels jumping up and down and say, yeah, let him die. Look at all the problems he's going to cause the Jewish people in the future. God says, is he guilty? No. He's a child. He's not guilty. So I can't kill him. So the verse says, Bashir Husham, where he's holding right now. So we don't get judged on the future. We get judged where we're holding now. But it's not just about what we did. See, as Ravigdor Miller said, action's important. Action's definitely important. Some people say, how could I do this? How could I do that if I don't really understand it? God said, I don't give you understand it or not. 90% of the Torah you're not going to understand. Doesn't make sense. You got to keep it anyway. You got to learn it. That's the whole life of learning, but you have to keep it anyway. Makes more sense, makes less sense. Doesn't matter. Most of the Torah doesn't make sense. Right? People use that as an excuse. Right? Someone bought a sweater for my kids and said, I have to check it for shotness. Well, it's got wool, it says 100% wool, you got to see if it's got linen in it. They said, why? I said, I'm not really sure. It's a law we don't really understand. Right? But I can't wear wool and linen together, the Torah says. So this Jewish person tells me, well, if you can't tell me the reason, why would I keep it? Yeah, that's a good excuse. And my answer, my quick answer was, and if I would give you an answer, you keep it? Well, that depends. Of course it depends. If it fits your world outlook, if it does, I can give you 10 reasons you're not going to do it. You know why you're not going to do it? Because you don't want to do it. You'll make an excuse. People say, no, but I have to really think about it. How could I do it if I don't understand? That's an excuse. Yeah, because you're expecting it. Yeah, the starting point is to do. You don't think about what you're doing. Do it, and then look into it. Because if you don't do it, then you're never going to do it. If it's all about philosophy, I have to understand this, and then I have to understand that. I heard someone give an example. You walk on an airplane, right? How can I get on an airplane? I don't understand physical, thermodynamics, and I don't understand this. I don't understand that. Person says, if you don't get on the plane, you're going to miss it. You're not going to get to your destination. Forget about thermodynamics. You want to learn it? Read a book. Watch some videos on it. But if you don't get on the plane, you're going to miss it. Right? So philosophy, and what's behind it and this, and I can think this, I can think, you're right. Practically speaking, you don't get on the plane, you miss it. So people use that as an excuse, but if we're going to keep the will of God, how can I keep what I don't understand? So basically you're saying, well, I need to understand, to what level? Kabbalistic level? You need to understand it? Or, if I would explain things in 30-second sound bites. Right? I can't even say 30 seconds because people don't have that attention span. It's like 5 seconds, not even. Put on my bow tie, it'd be like a game show. All right, for 200 points, why did God create the world? Bam, bam, bam. It doesn't work that way. We have to understand some basic things. But if a person only thinks and thinks and thinks, they're never going to do anything. And that's the way the evil inclination, it's what the evil inclination wants. But if you think about it, 80% of the Torah doesn't make rational sense. If it doesn't make rational sense, you still have to keep it. Right? It doesn't really matter. So, this judgment a person's going to go through is judgment to the core. Is judgment to what we think. Where our minds are at all times. And that is what Ravigdor Miller says, we're all in deep trouble for that. No one's going to escape that. Because that's something that's so crucial. Because you're going to go through the motions, which is good, and hopefully that has an effect on ourselves. But the reality is God knows our thoughts. He knows every last thought, as the Rambam says in 13 Principles. He knows the thoughts of men. So some will say, God knows the thoughts, I'm in trouble, that's it, I'm finished. That's an easy way out also. You're not going to just zap or whatever. We got what to work on. But we have to know what the reality is. So how do I get on to all this? Because when a person thinks something, it's part of their psyche. Once it's part of your psyche, you have to fight tooth and nail to get rid of it. But it's there. So a person said, oh, slip of the tongue. No. It's not slip of the tongue. That's what you think. That's what you believe. It's not a flippant thing. A person doesn't say flippant things in general. Some people, as you mentioned earlier, yeah, they have diarrhea of the mouth. Yeah. And people just talk and talk and talk. They don't think. Okay. But there are other people, I think, a little more methodical. That, they don't always show what they say. They don't always show what they think. They don't want to show necessarily what they think. Some don't care. Some will just tell you straight out, whether it's offensive or not offensive. But others may be a little more tricky. Because they may say all the right things and then, just stab you in the back. All right, someone told me grew up in the Ukraine. Ukrainians exactly like that. Smiles on the face, this and that. If they have a chance, they'll knife you straight in the back. Right here in Israel, no different. Person can, have an Arab employee for years and years and come back and stab you. Why? Because he did. And that's for whatever. So that's the thanks you get for employing him. Right? So your enemies, you know what to expect. But people you come in contact with, you don't know what to expect. You don't know exactly where they're holding. They know where they're holding. They know what they think. They just don't tell you. Sometimes they will, whatever. But what's deep inside a person may come out even at the wrong time, quote unquote. But see, we don't believe there's a wrong time. We believe when a person says something, they thought about it. It's there. They meant it. We even quote the great, the holy Miss Whoopi Goldberg and what she said. You don't think she believed it? Got caught off guard because Twitter blew her up. She got totally blown up for what she said. Absolute ignoramus about the Holocaust. Right? No, but she knew what she said. She downplayed it, but she knew exactly what she said. Don't make any mistake that she doesn't believe that. Of course she believes it. She just got called on it. Got suspended, came back, whatever. But she got called on it, which she should have. You make such a ludicrous statement, such an anti-Semitic statement, you should be called on it. Don't think that's not what she believes. And other people can say all kinds of nasty things. So okay, you know where they stand. They're not hiding anything. See, but when someone hides something and then it comes out, just like this basketball player, no, that's not a mistake. 100% it's not a mistake. That's what he believes. Oops, I shouldn't have said it. You said it. And all of Julius Edelman's cooking is not going to help him over here. It's not going to change his mind about Jews. That's what he believes. Again, is he such an anti-Semite more than others? I don't know. I'm not judging that. But when someone makes a statement like that, truly, a truly anti-Semitic thing, then my assumption is he's an anti-Semite. That's the assumption. It could be a Jew or non-Jew. You have Jewish anti-Semites, that hate Torah and hate God and all that. Also, some are more explicit, some less, but it all comes out. Right? The point is, it all comes out. So we're our own worst enemy over here. We have to show who we are on the outside, which matches who we are on the inside. Now, that's a little bit harder. That's a little bit harder because we are walking contradictions in general. Because there are times, even if we do the right thing, our mind's totally elsewhere. Or we do things that contradict what we really should be doing. So you say, okay, what's the answer? Everyone's got an evil inclination. Everyone's torn in 100 different directions. You're right. You're right. Everyone's torn 100 different directions. But at the end of the day, we still have to answer. And God's going to judge us where we're holding. So if a person, we're not going to get so depressed here. So if a person's doing the right thing or hopefully going in the right direction, okay. But there are multiple levels to reach. So we said that this mother is going to be praiseworthy because she gave birth to him. That's, since he raised himself to such a high level, it's a praise to the mother. If not, then the parents over here get vilified for what the child does. But you're going to say, come on, after a certain amount of time, the child has free will, okay? Everybody has free will. And there are certain things that are out of our control, that we can't control. But where do the values come from? Values come from parents. Woe to the parents that children see the contradictions in them. Because they're going to say, well, if you can do it, why can't I do it? I had someone who grew up unorthodox. He come home from yeshiva and he said, okay, you got to review, got to this. His father tells him, and he's sitting, reading the paper, watching TV. Do as I say, not as I do. So what message is the kid going to get? The message is, those aren't really that important. For you, you have to do it. For me, it's a different issue. I'll keep it, but not, there's a limit. I want to kick back, have a beer, watch the game, this, that. Okay, but you have to learn. But why don't you have to learn? So when kids see contradictions, the worst thing, and we all have them to a certain extent. We try our best to stay on the right path. Parents have an awesome responsibility. Parents can make or break kids. They can turn them against, when they get older. We do the best we can. It's, we're living, each generation has their own evil inclination. In the early 1900s, right, it's all about socialism, communism, democracy, different things taking Jews away. Today it's all about a hedonistic lifestyle. It's all about desire today. No more philosophers exist today. They're not, asking the major questions, whatever. It's desire. And people don't care what's true and what's not true. They're not interested in looking at it. They just want to do what they want to do and justify it. So people like that, it's very hard to change. But see, giving good values, you're giving them a way to fight. So we said before the story of the Baal Tanya. You take someone, who's supposed to absorb Torah and mitzvahs at a relatively high level, and you stick them in an environment that is totally contradictory to that, they're going to fall fast. Unless they make so many boundaries and this and that. There are unorthodox parents that have said, many have said, they're so proud of their kids, went to Harvard, to Yale, to Princeton, all these places. But their Yiddishkeit, their Judaism suffered. Totally suffered. It's a price you pay. Some more, some less. But you're part of that environment, yeah, it's negative. So you're going to say, doesn't the Torah, can't it fight everything? Little bit of Torah, little bit of light pushes away a lot of darkness. Problem over here is that you're surrounded by darkness. All around. Now, you can tell me that some places there's a lot of, good Jewish things going on, and there's learning, and there's this. Okay, there are ways to combat it. But you're not talking this is the best way to do things. But there's a way to combat it. Okay. I heard a great rabbi once say, I'd be willing to send my kids to university, if I know they're going to come out more moral than they went in. And that nobody can say. Not certainly not in this generation. Got to go to university, they won't even know which bathroom to step in. It's crazy. So you're going to say, what? What are you afraid of? What are we afraid of? The power of the street. That's what we're afraid of. Power of the street is unbelievably powerful. Person has to have boundaries on top of boundaries in order to keep that garbage out. But you got to live in the world. You have to live in the world. You have to know how to live in the world. You have to know, how to put on the blinders. What to look at. And again, I read this article today, so many different questions about influence of social media, which a lot of people don't need. A lot of it, total waste of time. But With all that said, the influence on young minds can destroy them. Destroy them. There are people who said certain images they saw, they're finished at a young age. Can't look at Torah mitzvahs, can't look at God, can't this, can't that. Destroyed. Many, many cases. So the question of what we do. But see, how can a person fight all this if the thoughts in their mind are going nuts? The Arizal, provides the glory of blessed memory, says according to the Zohar, a person prays, a Jew prays, when he says the Shemona Esrei, 19 blessings, but personal salvation, redemption, spiritual redemption, physical redemption, knowledge, health, all these things. 19 blessings. It says the Arizal, if you get distracted during any of these blessings, you know why I got distracted? Sin. That's why you get distracted. In other words, we have to focus. And we have to constantly focus. And people are going to say that's almost impossible. It's not impossible. It's not impossible. I can work on myself what I see.
Yeah, Rabbi, but doesn't a sponge have a limit to what it can absorb? I mean,
Torah is infinite.
I know Torah is infinite, but when it comes to us absorbing it, I mean, we have our limits.
We're human.
Sure.
You're right. You're right. We're human. Right? But the question is, even in downtime, what am I doing? So I've heard great rabbis say, in downtimes I learn something lighter. Your brain is like turning to jelly. Learn Tanakh, learn Jewish history, learn Musar. Many things. We're not machines. Some people are, but most people are not machines. So the question, the question is I have to try and absorb everything. When even if I'm tired, and I can't even tell you every Shavuos night I get this. I'm like, I struggle, and then I get a second wind, struggle to stay up, get a second wind. How much do I remember? This, that, okay. It's all part of showing commitment. We want to show commitment. So the problem is that if we let any other things in general, what does that do? That has a negative effect. I'm not going to say it's not fun. I'm not going to say it's not enjoyable. All this. It is, but it's coming from the wrong side. You're going to say, how much can a person take? Imagine. I use you as an example. Now, in general, imagine, someone spent years. Sports is a good example. How much people waste time. Watching, following, this, that. So imagine if we took that amount of time. It could be hundreds of hours. Maybe thousands of hours. Imagine if that was focused at some level in Torah. I wasn't on social media, use those hours. I wasn't watching that, use those hours. Wasn't watching movies, those hours. There are hundreds of thousands of hours. If they use for Torah, imagine the merit we get. I gave this example, right, that I think I heard Rabbi Chaim Coffman, he should be well, say that I think a person uses their phone to watch or listen to other things at least 4 hours a day. That has nothing to do with anything. Not with work, whatever. 4 hours a day. Do the math. If you did it 6 days a week, we'll say you didn't do it on Shabbos. Right? 4 times 6 is 24. Multiply it by 4. That's 96 hours a month. That's 4 days a month. 4 days a month multiplied by 12. That's 48. That's 50 days almost a year. Right? It's a month and a half. That means a month and a half you spent doing nothing. A year. Multiply 20, 30, 40, whatever. Multiply by whatever you want. Those numbers are 100% scary. You're going to say, okay, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is, it adds up. It adds up. So imagine now, imagine we just said 4 days a month. 4 days a month.
Full days.
90
yeah.
full days. 96 hours. Imagine if even a portion of those hours were used for Torah. Not all of them, God forbid. Imagine if a portion of those hours were used for the right thing. We'd look different. I tell people all the time, and this could be my ego coming out, right? I tell people all the time, with all that useless information, sports, TV, movies, all these things, I would have been a Torah giant years ago if I was absorbed in the right environment. But I wasn't. So I'm not waiting now, right? But what's the difference? The difference is now you realize. A lot of people don't care. They don't realize, they don't realize they don't care. But if someone really cares, now you tell somebody who's done that for years and years to stop. It's just as addictive as nicotine, if not more. Tell someone, come on, you just told me they just started the CFL. Imagine if you didn't have a TV set. You didn't have internet. You don't know what's going on in the CFL. Right? You just go about whatever you're doing, like out of sight, out of mind. You're going to say, that may last an hour. 20 minutes. Might last a day. Right? But why is it? Because it's part of us. It's it's something to fight. But my point is, imagine, my only point here is imagine if that time was sanctified for good things. Hundreds upon hundreds of hours. So what's the obvious question? People are going to say, well, what do I do with that time? My brain is fried. It's enjoyable. And even going to say, maybe it's a Noahide. It's a moral imperative. For a Jew, it might be just a waste of time. Okay. What does King David say? We'll make it real morbid. What does King David say? We're here 70 years. If we get strength, we're here 80 years. Everything over that's a blessing. Rabbi Ori Zohar, blessed memory, just passed away. He's 86 years old. Ori Zohar was the most famous Baal Tshuva there was, returning to Judaism. Famous actor, Israeli actor. Became religious at the age of 40. And he spent the last 46 years learning and learning and learning. And he lived in a place, the last number of years, 25 meters. 25 meters he lived. Because he said, money I don't need. I'm here to learn. That's it. He had different people who learn with day in and day out. But he said, all those years wasted. Movies and this and fame and whatever. He just sat and he learned and he helped educate the masses who don't know anything about Judaism. Imagine where he would have been 40 years before. But look what he became. Okay, you can't think in the past. You got to think, okay, what do I do now? Where do I go? The question is, what do we do with our time? That's the question. And how do we use it? And how do we utilize it? So if a person involved in Torah mitzvah is very good, but you got to focus. You can't lose focus. Because once you lose focus, then, it's just a Pandora's box. And I guess, as we say, I didn't get that far, which I was hoping to get a little bit further, but okay. So I guess next week, chapter 2, Mishna 11, part 5. Have to cover a little bit the ground here, but I don't know. I think we brought up
you were making some great ground in here today, and I think you touched on some really big points. And
I don't know. If you're going to still speak to me after this week, so I hit you kind of hard, but that's what we're here for.
Well, with working all night and having to go back into work tonight, I got to get some sleep after my broadcast so I don't get to watch my CFL game. So, I got to weigh priorities out, and we all have to do that in life. And I think your message is pretty clear today that Torah should take a high priority in all that we are. And let it integrate. And you want to reflect it. You've got to get it in you. And I think you did a great job today, Rabbi. So, and it was good to see you again. I missed you last week, like I said, and I haven't been watching the NBA Finals. I did catch a little bit of some, but I haven't. It's not like I'm glued to it. But I'm just rooting for the Celtics. Yeah, just maybe it's a sentimental thing on my part, but yeah. So we are on for next week.
Hopefully, yeah.
Chapter 2, Mishna 11, Part 5. For Pirkei Avos, and I've got to step out now and log in. We're coming back in a half hour with Rabbi Poston, and we're continuing in the Tomer Devorah series, which is excellent. So I invite you all to attend. So we're going to sign out for now. We'll be back same time next week, Hashem willing. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, everybody. Bye for now.